The Zephyrian exploration vessel, Harmony's Edge, drifts silently toward a crippled ship unlike any they've ever seen, its hull scarred, its life support failing. As the aliens decode mathematical messages and attempt first contact, they have no idea that a formidable human warship lurks within, poised to change their universe forever. Fleet Leader Vexal stood at the observation deck of Harmony's Edge, four eyes blinking in rapid succession as the unknown vessel came into view. The ship was nothing like he had ever encountered in his 2 centuries of exploration. Angular, where Zephyrian vessels were curved. Darkened, where theirs glowed with bioluminescence. And most disturbingly, scarred with what appeared to be evidence of conflict. Science Commander Ethera, what are your readings? Vexal's voice maintained the musical calm typical of his species, but his inner membranes flickered with unease. Ethera, her pale blue skin reflecting the ambient light of the command center, leaned over her console. Multiple biological signatures aboard. Fleet Leader. They appear to be alive but unconscious. Life support systems are failing at an alarming rate. Naval Officer Telth approached, his movements precise and measured. The vessel appears to have sustained significant damage. Our scans indicate technology unlike any in our database. Vexal considered this information, his 4 eyes focusing and unfocusing as he processed the implications. The Zephyrian Exploration Guild had chartered Harmony's Edge as their flagship of peaceful discovery. In the thousands of years of Zephyrian space travel, they had encountered 17 other sentient species, all peaceful, all welcomed into their coalition of knowledge seekers. But this vessel bore the marks of something the Zephyrians had theorized but never witnessed firsthand. Warfare. Initiate contact protocols, Vexal ordered softly. Begin with mathematical sequences and alert peaceful harbor station of our discovery. Aboard the damaged vessel, designated USS Liberty. First Officer Lisa Morgan awakened to the taste of blood and the screech of failing systems. The bridge around her was in ruins, consoles sparking, emergency lighting casting a blood-red glow over twisted metal and unconscious crewmates. Captain Jake Sullivan lay slumped in his command chair, a gash across his forehead still oozing crimson. Captain Sullivan? Morgan pulled herself up, ignoring the shooting pain in her left leg. When the captain didn't respond, she checked his pulse, steady, but weak. Medical team to the bridge, she called into her communicator, receiving only static in response. Communications Officer Turner, can you hear me? She called out, spotting Brad Turner's form sprawled near his station. Turner groaned, pushing himself upright. I'm here, Commander. What happened? The Korvac attack. They hit us harder than expected. Morgan limped to the nearest functioning console. We're dead in space. Life support is failing. We need to... A soft beeping interrupted her. Morgan's eyes widened as she read the sensor display. We have company. Turner. Unknown vessel approaching. Reducing speed. Doesn't match any known configuration. Turner dragged himself to his station, wiping blood from his eyes. Running recognition protocols. Nothing in the database. Is it Korvac? Morgan's voice hardened. Negative. Nothing like their design signature. This is something else entirely. As if on cue, Turner's console emitted a series of tones, structured, rhythmic, unmistakably intentional. They're sending us something, Turner said, his fatigue momentarily forgotten. Mathematical sequences, prime numbers. Morgan felt a chill race down her spine. First contact, she whispered. In the middle of nowhere, with our ship half destroyed and our captain unconscious. Should I respond? Turner asked. Morgan stared at the screen, showing the approaching vessel. Smooth, almost organic in design, with soft blue lights pulsing along its hull. No visible weapons. No aggressive posture. Yes, she decided. Send the same sequence back, followed by the Fibonacci series. Let's see if they understand. Back on Harmony's edge, Ethera's 4 eyes widened as her console chirped. Fleet Leader, they've responded. The same prime sequence, followed by a mathematical progression. Vexal moved to her side, studying the incoming data. They understand. Prepare a more complex message. Include basic stellar cartography. What if they're raiders? Telth cautioned, his inner membranes darkening with concern. This region has been mapped only recently. We know little of what lurks beyond the Trisemi cluster. Raiders wouldn't respond with mathematics, Vexal reasoned. And our scans show their vessel is severely damaged. They pose no threat to us. He paused, inner membranes shifting to a lighter hue. More importantly, they need our help. Their life support systems will fail within 6 hours, Ethera confirmed. Vexal's decision crystallized. Set course for Peaceful Harbor Station. We'll bring them to safety. On the Liberty, Morgan, watch the alien vessel adjust its course. They're moving alongside us, she reported, matching our drift. Turner worked furiously at his console. I think they're offering help. These transmissions include coordinates to a nearby station or outpost. Morgan considered their options, which were painfully few. The Liberty had no propulsion, failing life support, and a severely wounded crew. If these aliens meant harm, they were already at their mercy. If they meant help, send our acceptance, she ordered, and wake as many of the crew as you can. I want a security detail ready, just in case. Hours later, the Harmony's edge guided the crippled Liberty toward an orbital structure that gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of space. Peaceful Harbor Station was the pride of Zephyrian architecture, curves flowing into curves, surfaces that changed color with the light, and vast transparent sections revealing gardens and water features within. As they approached, smaller vessels detached from the station, sleek medical pods designed for rescue operations. The Zephyrians had never needed to rescue victims of warfare before, but their protocols for stellar accidents were comprehensive. Inside, Liberty. Morgan had managed to awaken a skeleton crew, including Lieutenant Commander Ryan Foster, their tactical officer, and communications officer Brad Turner. Engineer Danny Rodriguez worked feverishly to stabilize what systems he could, while navigator Amara Lynn plotted their position based on the alien star charts they'd received. They're sending smaller craft, Foster reported, watching the approaching pods through a viewport. No visible weapons. Those look like medical vessels, Morgan observed. Similar to our own medevac shuttles. When the first pod docked with Liberty, the humans tensed, weapons drawn despite Morgan's orders for restraint. The airlock cycled, and into their ship stepped creatures, unlike anything they'd seen before. The Zephyrians stood slightly taller than the average human, with slender builds and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. Their skin ranged from pale blue to soft lavender, and they moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost choreographed. Most striking was their complete lack of protective gear or weapons. They carried only what appeared to be medical equipment. "We come in peace," the lead Zephyrian said in halting, accented English, clearly reconstructed from the computer transmissions they'd analyzed. "Your vessel is damaged. Your people injured. We offer sanctuary." Morgan lowered her sidearm. "We accept your help," she said carefully. "Our captain needs immediate medical attention." The Zephyrian's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, an expression the humans couldn't yet read. "We will care for all your wounded. Please, follow us to Peaceful Harbor." The evacuation proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Zephyrian medical pods transferred the wounded humans to their station, where healing chambers, unlike anything in human medicine, awaited. Captain Sullivan and the most critically injured were immediately placed in these chambers, transparent pods filled with a luminescent fluid that somehow accelerated healing without invasive procedures. Dr. Patricia Wells, Liberty's chief medical officer, watched in amazement as Zephyrian medical staff worked on her patients. "Their technology is extraordinary," she whispered to Morgan. "They're repairing tissue damage I would have needed surgery to address." Morgan nodded, but her attention was on Captain Sullivan, who floated unconscious in one of the healing pods. "Will he recover?" "According to their medical specialist, Cam, I think yes, but it will take time." Meanwhile, Science Commander Ethera led a team aboard the damaged Liberty, fascinated by human technology despite its compromised state. While the Zephyrians possessed more advanced medical and scientific equipment, the human vessel contained systems they had never conceived, primarily because they served functions Zephyrians had never needed. "What is this compartment?" Ethera asked Engineer Rodriguez, who had volunteered to guide the alien scientists. Rodriguez hesitated. "Those are our weapon systems," he admitted. "Defensive capabilities." Ethera's four eyes widened, and her inner membranes darkened visibly. "Weapons? For what purpose?" "Protection," Rodriguez explained, suddenly uncomfortable. "From threats." "What threats require such tools?" Ethera's musical voice carried a note of genuine confusion. Before Rodriguez could answer, their conversation was interrupted by an announcement. Captain Sullivan had regained consciousness. In the medical bay of Peaceful Harbor Station, Sullivan awoke to sapphire blue lights and the concerned faces of four-eyed beings hovering over him. His military training kicked in immediately. He remained still, assessing his situation before revealing his consciousness. "Captain Sullivan," said a familiar voice. "It's Morgan. Sir, you're safe. We're on an alien station. They rescued us after the Korvac attack." Sullivan turned his head slightly, seeing his first officer standing beside his healing pod. "Report," he managed, his voice hoarse. "The Liberty is severely damaged but secured in their docking bay. Most of our crew is recovering. The aliens call themselves Zephyrians. They're a peaceful exploration species. This is their research outpost, Peaceful Harbor Station." Sullivan processed this information as the fluid in his pod began to drain. "The Korvac?" "No sign of pursuit, but our long-range sensors were destroyed in the attack. We're blind beyond this system." As Sullivan emerged from the pod, a tall Zephyrian approached, four eyes, blinking in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. "I am Fleet Leader Vexal." The alien introduced himself. "Commander of Harmony's Edge and Administrator of Peaceful Harbor Station. Your vessel's distress was great. We are pleased you recover well." Sullivan stood carefully, testing his balance. "Captain Jake Sullivan of the United Earthship Liberty. I thank you for saving my crew." Vexal's inner membranes shifted to a lighter hue, a sign, Sullivan would later learn, of positive emotion. "It is the way of the Void Travelers to assist one another. We have many questions. If you are strong enough to speak." "I imagine you do," Sullivan replied, glancing at Morgan. "And I have questions of my own." The cultural exchange began cautiously. The humans were given quarters in Peaceful Harbor's visitor section, chambers designed with an aesthetic beauty that bordered on the surreal. Curved walls that seemed to flow rather than connect, ambient lighting that adjusted to mood and time, and gardens integrated into living spaces created an environment of tranquil harmony. Council Leader Nathara, a senior Zephyrian official who happened to be visiting the station, arranged a formal meeting in what the humans came to call the Garden Chamber, a vast room where vegetation from dozens of worlds grew in artful arrangement, surrounding a central meeting area. "We have studied your vessel's computer archives," Nathara began, her four eyes fixed intently on Sullivan. As the eldest Zephyrian present, her pale blue skin had darkened to almost indigo with age, and her movements were more deliberate than her younger counterparts. Behind her, a holographic display activated, showing images recovered from Liberty's historical database. The humans tensed as scenes flickered past. Earth's wars throughout history, space conflicts with pirates and raiders, training exercises showing weapons deployment. Your species has a concept we find difficult, Nathara continued. Violence as a method of resolution? Sullivan straightened in his seat. Humanity has a complex history, he acknowledged. We've fought wars among ourselves, yes. But we've also established peace among our colonies. The ship you rescued, the Liberty, is primarily a defensive vessel. We talk first, but sometimes must fight to protect innocence. Ithera, who stood nearby, blinked rapidly, a sign of distress. Your archives show destruction on scales we cannot comprehend. Bodies interred, ships disintegrating, civilians fleeing conflict zones. Morgan leaned forward. With respect, we were attacked by the Korvac Empire before you found us. We didn't provoke them. They targeted us because we refused to surrender a research outpost to their control. Nathara's membranes darkened. This Korvac Empire, they practice violence regularly? They're an expansionist species, Sullivan explained. Reptilian, highly militaristic. They conquer and enslave. We've had conflicts with them at our borders for the past decade. The Zepyrians exchange glances, a complex communication using their four eyes and shifting membranes that the humans couldn't yet interpret. In 2,000 years of void travel, Vexal said slowly, the Zepyrian Exploration Guild has never encountered a species that uses force to dominate others. We believed such behavior was theoretically possible, but evolutionarily unlikely to persist in advanced civilizations. Sullivan felt a chill at those words. The implications were staggering. A species that had achieved interstellar travel without ever developing weapons technology. A culture so fundamentally peaceful that they couldn't comprehend the concept of warfare. You've been fortunate, he said quietly. But the galaxy is vast, and not all species share your values. The Korvac Empire has conquered 43 worlds in the past century. They enslave populations and strip resources. They do not respond to peaceful overtures. Nathara's four eyes narrowed. And your response is to deploy weapons against them? To destroy their vessels? To take lives? When necessary to protect innocent lives? Yes, Sullivan admitted. We don't take that responsibility lightly. The tension in the garden chamber thickened. First Officer Morgan gave Sullivan a warning glance. These aliens clearly found the entire concept of warfare abhorrent. The wrong words could damage this nascent relationship irreparably. Perhaps, Morgan suggested, we could better understand each other through demonstration rather than explanation. Your people must have protocols for emergencies, for saving lives in dangerous situations. Vexal's membranes lightened slightly. Yes, we have extensive procedures for natural disasters, stellar phenomena, and rescue operations. Could you show us? Morgan asked. And then perhaps we could demonstrate our approach to similar situations. The Zepyrians agreed, seemingly relieved to move from abstract discussion to practical demonstration. They led the humans to a vast chamber, unlike any other on the station, a holographic simulation room where scenarios could be enacted with perfect fidelity. We use this for training explorers, Ithera explained, as the room transformed around them. The scenario will be a standard rescue operation in an asteroid field. Refugees from a natural disaster need extraction, but gravitational fluctuations make the approach dangerous. The simulation unfolded with breathtaking realism. A dozen Zepyrian ships, all science and medical vessels, approached an asteroid field where a damaged civilian transport had taken refuge. Carefully, using stealth and sensor technology, they navigated the treacherous field, deployed invisible guide drones, and created a safe corridor through which the refugees could be evacuated. Not a single weapon was fired. No asteroids were destroyed. The entire operation relied on finesse, precision, and patience, qualities the Zepyrians clearly valued above all else. When the simulation ended, They turned to the humans with expressions that could only be interpreted as pride. "Now we understand your approach," Sullivan said diplomatically. "Would you permit us to demonstrate our methods for a similar scenario?" Vexel hesitated but nodded. "We would witness your way." Sullivan turned to his officers. "Lieutenant Commander Foster, set up a comparable simulation, asteroid field rescue, but add Korvac raider vessels pursuing the refugees." Foster programmed the parameters, and the holographic chamber transformed once more. This time, the scenario included aggressive pursuers, reptilian Korvac ships hunting the civilian transport. The humans approached the simulation with military precision. Foster identified weak points in the Korvac ships' designs, planning precise strikes in the asteroid corridors. Amara Lin calculated navigation paths that would use the asteroids as cover, while Danny Rodriguez determined optimal weapon yields to disable, rather than destroy, enemy vessels. In under 20 minutes, the human team had executed their rescue, the Korvac ships disabled with surgical precision, the refugees evacuated with minimal risk, and only one simulated casualty among the hundreds saved. When the simulation ended, the Zepyrians stood in stunned silence. Their 4 eyes were wide, their inner membranes darkened to colors the humans had not yet seen. "You make violence look effortless," Athera finally whispered, her voice trembling. "Why would you choose to kill?" "We didn't kill," Foster corrected. "We disabled their vessels." "The crews would die without life support," Telth observed quietly. Sullivan met Nathara's troubled gaze. "Because when talking fails, we must protect lives, or they die. The Korvac give no quarter, show no mercy. They would have slaughtered those refugees without hesitation." Nathara's 4 eyes filled with tears, a sight that startled the humans. "There must be another way," she insisted. "We've spent centuries looking for it," Sullivan replied softly. "When we find it, no one will embrace it more quickly than humanity." The demonstration created a rift between the species. Zepyrian leaders began arguing among themselves, some advocating immediate evacuation of Peaceful Harbor, others insisting on continued diplomatic engagement with the humans. The debate spread throughout the station, creating an atmosphere of tension previously unknown in Zepyrian society. Captain Sullivan gathered his senior officers in their assigned quarters. "We've created quite a stir," he observed dryly. "They've never had to defend themselves," Morgan said. "Never even conceived of it. It's like they've evolved beyond aggression entirely." "A beautiful ideal," Sullivan agreed, "but dangerously naive in a galaxy that includes species like the Korvac." Dr. Patricia Wells, who had been working closely with Zepyrian medical staff, joined the conversation. "Their physiology reflects their psychology," she reported. "Their stress responses are communal rather than individual. They literally feel each other's pain through pheromone detection. Violence against one feels like violence against all." "Which explains their horror at our military tactics," Foster mused. "Captain," Turner interrupted, studying a tablet. "I've been analyzing long-range sensor data from the Zepyrian network. There are odd fluctuations in the outer system, patterns consistent with Korvac warp signatures." Sullivan's expression hardened. "Could they have tracked us here?" "Possibly. Or they could be expanding into this sector independently. Either way, these people are in danger," Sullivan concluded, "and they have no concept of how to defend themselves." The next morning, as Zepyrians and humans continued their uneasy cultural exchange, Dr. Wells collaborated with Zepyrian scientists to analyze the long-range sensor data. What they found sent ripples of alarm through Peaceful Harbor. 57 vessels, Wells reported to Sullivan and Vexel, who had convened an emergency meeting. "Definitely Korvac dreadnoughts, converging on the station. Time to arrival, approximately 48 hours. Vexel's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. "You are certain of this?" Wells nodded grimly. "The warp signatures are unmistakable. This is a full battle fleet." Amara Lin, who had been analyzing stellar cartography with Zephyrian navigators, displayed a holographic map. They're approaching from 7 vectors, clearly intending to surround the station. Standard Korvac encirclement tactics. They must have detected your vessel, Telth suggested, his tone accusatory. Or your research station, Foster countered. The Korvac target advanced technology regardless of its source. They integrate it into their own systems. Vexal turned to Nathara, who had been silent throughout the exchange. Council leader, we must evacuate Peaceful Harbor immediately. We cannot stand against such a force. Evacuation will take at least 3 days, Ethera interjected. We have over 4,000 researchers and support staff, plus specimens and critical research data. Sullivan stepped forward. There is another option, he said quietly. Let me and the Liberty hold the choke point near the 3rd planet. We can at least buy you time to evacuate your most essential personnel and data. Vexal stared at him in disbelief. Your vessel is severely damaged. Your crew injured. You would sacrifice yourselves? We're soldiers, Sullivan said simply. This is what we do. And I cannot ask it of you, Vexal replied, inner membranes shifting through colors of distress. Your conflict with these Korvac is not our doing. Sullivan's expression hardened. The Korvac don't distinguish between humans and Zephyrians. They conquer. They enslave. They destroy what they cannot use. If we don't stand together now, we fall separately later. Before Vexal could respond, the station's communication system activated. A harsh, reptilian face filled the holographic display, scales gleaming metallic in the light of a Korvac bridge. Yellow eyes with vertical pupils, narrowed in cruel assessment. Peaceful species, the Korvac commander hissed. Universal translator, struggling with the sibilance of their language. I am Commander Scarex of the Korvac Empire. We have detected your station and determined it contains technology useful to our expansion. Surrender your facility and data, or be enslaved. You have 48 hours to comply. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in silence. Nathara turned to Sullivan, her aged face set in unfamiliar lines of grim determination. You said they give no quarter? None, Sullivan confirmed. Surrender means slavery at best, execution at worst. Vexal's inner membranes shifted to a deep purple, a color Sullivan had not seen before. Then it seems we have no choice but to consider your proposal, Captain Sullivan. He hesitated. But how can one damaged ship stand against 57? Sullivan turned to his officers. We don't fight fair, he said. We fight smart. Lieutenant Commander Foster, what do we have to work with? Over the next 24 hours, Peaceful Harbor Station transformed. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian scientists, teaching them to reverse engineer their own technology for defensive purposes. Asteroid mining lasers, designed to cut rock with surgical precision, were reconfigured into defensive cannons. Research probes, normally used to collect scientific data, were reprogrammed as guided missiles. The Zephyrians learned quickly, despite their initial moral hesitation. The threat of enslavement proved a powerful motivator. Still, their cultural revulsion to violence remained evident in their questions and concerns. Will this truly kill the Korvac? Asked Kevar, a young Zephyrian engineer working to modify a mining platform. It will disable their ships, Rodriguez explained patiently. What happens to the crew depends on their emergency protocols. But they might die? Rodriguez met the alien's four-eyed gaze. Yes, they might die. Kevar's inner membranes darkened, but he continued working. To protect our people, he whispered, seemingly to reassure himself. Meanwhile, Captain Sullivan and Vexal established a command center in Peaceful Harbor's observatory dome, where they could monitor the approaching Korvac fleet and coordinate their defensive strategy. The Liberty will position itself here, Sullivan explained, indicating a narrow corridor in the asteroid field surrounding the station. It's a natural choke point. The Korvac will have to pass through in small groups, rather than bringing their full force to bear at once. Our research vessels will support from these positions, Vexal added, marking locations on the holographic display. They lack your combat experience, but their sensors are highly accurate. Accuracy matters more than firepower, Sullivan assured him. We need precision, not brute force. As they worked, Council Leader Nathara approached, her aged face solemn. I have been in communion with our homeworld, she announced. The High Council has authorized defensive measures, the first such authorization in 2,000 years of Zepyrian history. Sullivan recognized the significance of this declaration. We won't let you down, he promised. You have already changed us irrevocably, Nathara replied, her voice tinged with an emotion Sullivan couldn't identify. Whether this is evolution or corruption, only time will tell. The final hours before the Korvac arrival were a flurry of preparation. The Liberty, though still damaged, had been made combat-ready through the combined efforts of human and Zepyrian engineers. Its weapon systems were fully operational, and innovative Zepyrian shield technology had been adapted to protect its most vulnerable areas. Zepyrian research vessels, never designed for combat, had been hastily retrofitted with modified mining lasers and sensor arrays calibrated to detect Korvac weak points. Most importantly, a defensive network of repurposed research probes had been deployed throughout the asteroid field, creating a web of surveillance and potential strike capabilities. As the countdown to Korvac arrival reached its final hours, Captain Sullivan addressed the combined human and Zepyrian crews from the Liberty's bridge. Today, we face an enemy that understands only dominance, he began, his voice carrying to screens throughout Peaceful Harbor Station. The Korvac Empire believes that peaceful species are weak, that those who choose cooperation over conflict are easy prey. Today, we prove them wrong. He surveyed the faces before him, human crew members standing alongside their new Zepyrian allies, united in purpose despite their profound differences. The Zepyrians have shown us that there is another way to live among the stars, a path of discovery and mutual respect. The Korvac would extinguish that light. We cannot allow it. Fleet Leader Vexal stepped forward, taking his place beside Sullivan. For 2 millennia, my people have explored the void believing that violence was a primitive trait, outgrown by truly advanced civilizations. We were wrong. Today, we learn that protecting life, even through force, can be the highest expression of our values. Liberty will take position at the choke point in 15 minutes, Sullivan concluded. All vessels to battle stations. Remember your training, trust your instincts, and watch out for each other. That is all. As the crews dispersed to their assigned positions, First Officer Morgan approached Sullivan. Quite the speech, Captain. Sullivan's expression was grim. Let's hope it's not our eulogy. The Liberty moved into position, its battle-scarred hull a stark contrast to the sleek Zepyrian vessels now flanking it at a distance. The narrow asteroid trench ahead, dubbed the Maw by Foster, would force the Korvac vessels to approach in small groups, unable to bring their full numerical advantage to bear. Korvac fleet approaching outer marker, Turner reported from his communication station. 57 vessels confirmed. Sullivan settled into his command chair. Weapons status? All systems online, Foster confirmed. Modified shields at 90%. Zepyrian vessels in position, Morgan added. Peaceful Harbor has begun emergency evacuation protocols. Sullivan nodded. Send one final communication to the Korvac fleet. Inform them that this system is under joint human-Zepyrian protection, and any hostile action will be met with defensive force. Turner transmitted the message. The response came almost immediately. A harsh, reptilian laugh from Commander Scarex. Humans, the Korvac leader hissed. So far from your territories, protecting weaklings who cannot protect themselves. Your ship is damaged. Your crew is minimal. You cannot stand against the might of the Korvac Empire. We'll see about that, Sullivan muttered as the transmission ended. All hands. Battle stations. Prepare for engagement. The first wave of Korvac ships entered the maw. 3 sleek, predatory vessels with hulls that gleamed like burnished metal. They moved with confident precision, clearly expecting minimal resistance from what their scans had identified as a research station. They're in range, Foster reported. Targeting solutions locked. Sullivan drew a deep breath. Fire! The Liberty's weapons unleashed precisely calculated bursts, targeting the engines of the lead Korvac vessel. Simultaneously, hidden Zepyrian probes detonated, creating a debris field that disoriented the Korvac sensors. The lead ship's engines flared and died, its momentum carrying it forward into the path of its companions. Confusion rippled through the Korvac formation as they encountered resistance where none had been expected. First wave disabled, Foster announced, a note of surprise in his voice. No return fire yet. They didn't expect a fight, Morgan observed. That advantage won't last long. She was right. The second wave of Korvac vessels entered the maw more cautiously, shields raised and weapons charged. These ships maneuvered in an evasive pattern, clearly aware now that they faced organized resistance. Second wave approaching, Foster reported. 5 vessels, heavy configuration. On the Zepyrian vessels flanking the battlefield. Science Commander Ethera and her team monitored the engagement with a mixture of horror and fascination. They had never witnessed combat firsthand, the violence of it, the precision, the calculated exchange of potentially lethal force. Korvac vessels are scanning for our positions, Telth reported. His inner membranes darkened with stress. Maintain stealth protocols, Ethera ordered. Prepare mining lasers for synchronized burst on my mark. As the Korvac ships came within range, the Liberty engaged again, this time meeting fierce resistance as the enemy returned fire. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, illuminating the asteroid field in brief. Violent flashes. Shields holding at 70%. Rodriguez reported from his engineering station aboard Liberty. Rerouting power to compensate for stress points. Sullivan watched the tactical display, noting the Korvac formation with a professional eye. They're probing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. Foster, target the lead vessel's sensor array. Let's blind them. The battle intensified as more Korvac ships entered the maw. The Liberty, despite its impressive showing, began to show signs of strain. Shield indicators flickered as repeated hits took their toll. Korvac commander is changing tactics, Morgan warned. They're sending smaller vessels through the outer asteroid belt, trying to flank our position. Sullivan nodded grimly. Just as we expected. Signal Ethera's team. It's time for the Zepyrians to join the fight. Across the battlefield, Ethera received the signal. Her 4 eyes blinked rapidly as she gave the order that no Zepyrian had given in 2 millennia. Engage defensive measures. Target enemy propulsion systems only. The Zepyrian vessels, hidden until now among the asteroids, powered up their modified mining lasers. These tools, designed to slice through rock with microscopic precision, had been reconfigured to target the vulnerable areas of Korvac ships that Foster's analysis had identified. In perfect synchronization, 12 Zepyrian beams lanced across space, striking the flanking Korvac vessels. The effect was immediate and devastating, not through brute force, but through precision. The Korvac ships, their propulsion systems severed with surgical accuracy, drifted helplessly. On the Korvac flagship, Commander Scarex received the reports with growing rage. "Who are these creatures that they dare resist us?" he snarled, scaled tail lashing behind him. "Full assault formation. All vessels converge on the human ship. Destroy it, and the station will fall easily." The Korvac fleet responded to their commander's fury, abandoning caution for overwhelming force. 8 dreadnoughts pushed into the maw simultaneously, their combined firepower focused on the Liberty. "Multiple impacts!" Rodriguez shouted, as the ship shuddered under the assault. Shields failing on decks 4 through 7. Reroute emergency power, Sullivan ordered, gripping his command chair as the ship rocked violently. Foster, target their weapon banks in sequence. Trying, sir, but there are too many targets. As the Liberty fought for survival, Vexal watched from Peaceful Harbor's command center, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display. The human vessel, already damaged before this engagement began, was being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Despite their courage and tactical brilliance, the humans could not withstand such an onslaught alone. His inner membranes shifted to a deep, resolute purple as he made his decision. "All vessels," he commanded, his musical voice firm with unprecedented authority. "Move to support position around the Liberty. Prepare all defensive measures. We will not allow our allies to fall." Across the battlefield, the remaining Zepyrian ships, 12 vessels never designed for combat, emerged from hiding and formed a protective formation around the beleaguered Liberty. Their modified mining lasers and shield generators combined into a network defense that momentarily confused the Korvac attackers. In that moment of confusion, Ethera targeted the flagship of the Korvac fleet, Commander Scarex's personal dreadnought. Her calculations were flawless, her timing perfect. The mining laser struck precisely as the Liberty fired its final volley, the combined attack crippling the Korvac vessel's weapon banks. The flagship erupted in secondary explosions, its commander's furious roars cut short as emergency containment fields activated. Scarex survived, but his ship, the pride of the Korvac fleet, drifted powerless. Without their commander's direct control, the Korvac fleet faltered. Individual captains, seeing their flagship disabled and facing unexpected resistance from what they had believed to be easy prey, began to break formation. Within minutes, the remaining functional Korvac vessels were retreating, abandoning their damaged companions. As the last enemy ships disappeared from sensor range, a stunned silence fell over the human and Zepyrian forces. They had done the impossible. A damaged human warship and hastily converted research vessels had repelled a Korvac battle fleet. On the Liberty's bridge, Sullivan allowed himself a moment of exhausted relief. "Damage report," he requested, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. "Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 6, Rodriguez reported. "Life support stable. Weapon systems at 20% capacity. We won't survive another round like that." "Casualties?" 7 confirmed, Morgan said quietly. 15 wounded. Sullivan closed his eyes briefly, honoring the fallen. "And the Zepyrians?" 4 vessels damaged. 3. Zepyrians lost. The weight of those words hung heavy in the air. 3 Zepyrians, members of a species that had never known warfare, never experienced violent death, had given their lives in defense of their home. "Open a channel to Fleet Leader Vexal," Sullivan ordered. Vexal's face appeared on the main view screen, his 4 eyes blinking slowly. The Zepyrian leader appeared changed somehow, his normally fluid movements more measured, his expression carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. "Captain Sullivan," he acknowledged, "the Korvac fleet has withdrawn beyond our sensor range. Your tactical planning was exceptional." "As was your courage," Sullivan replied. "I've never seen civilians adapt to combat conditions so quickly. Your people fought with honor." "Honor," Vexal repeated, as if testing the unfamiliar concept. 3 of my crew will never return to their families. Is this what you call honor?" Sullivan met his gaze steadily. "We call it sacrifice. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for others." "A human concept?" "A universal one. I think your people proved that today." As the immediate danger passed, the full impact of the battle began to register throughout Peaceful Harbor Station. Zepyrian crews stood shell-shocked in corridors that now bore the marks of hasty military conversion. Scientific instruments repurposed as tactical displays. Medical equipment adapted for treating combat injuries. Walls scorched by overloaded power conduits. The survivors gathered in the garden chamber, humans, and Zephyrians united by their shared ordeal. Council leader Nathara approached Captain Sullivan, her aged face bearing new lines of sorrow, her 4 eyes glistening with tears. "We thought violence was always evil," she said softly. "Today, we learned its necessity." Sullivan shook his head gently. "Not its necessity. Its tragic inevitability in a universe where some choose domination over cooperation. The necessity was your courage, your willingness to defend what matters." "Protection isn't hatred," Nathara realized. "It's love for the innocent." Nearby, Ethera knelt beside the remains of a fallen Korvax scout who had been recovered from a disabled vessel. The gesture, acknowledging the humanity of an enemy, struck Sullivan deeply. "We honor life," Ethera whispered, "even that of our enemies." In the days that followed, both species began the process of rebuilding. The Liberty underwent extensive repairs in Peaceful Harbor's engineering bay, its battle-scarred hull now bearing Zephyrian plaques of unity alongside human military insignia. The station itself was fortified, not transformed into a military outpost, but thoughtfully reinforced to protect the scientific and cultural work that remained its primary purpose. Most significantly, Vexel established a defense corps within the Zephyrian Exploration Guild. Not warriors in the human sense, but scientist-soldiers trained in non-lethal defensive tactics under human guidance. Their mission was clear: to protect Zephyrian research and exploration without compromising the core values of their peaceful society. Ethera, forever changed by her experience in combat, led a research initiative to adapt more of their peaceful technologies for defensive use only. "We will never be aggressors," she insisted, "but we need no longer be victims." 1 month after the battle, as the Liberty prepared to depart, its mission to escort Zephyrian scientists to the edges of known space and establish an early warning network against Korvac incursions, Captain Sullivan recorded his final report to Earth Command. "Mission exceeded expectations," he dictated. "We stand guard over the Trisemi cluster. Zephyrians are our staunchest allies, not because they have become like us, but because we have found common ground in our commitment to protecting innocent life." First Officer Morgan added her own entry to the ship's journal. "In their fear, we found our purpose, to be guardians of the innocent. In our strength, they found their courage, to stand against those who would destroy their way of life. Together, we are stronger than either could be alone." As the Liberty departed Peaceful Harbor, escorted by 2 newly commissioned Zephyrian defense vessels, word spread throughout the sector: a peaceful species had successfully repelled a Korvac battle fleet. The impossible had happened. More importantly, rumors began to circulate among potential aggressors. Zephyrian space now guarded by Deathworld warriors. The Korvac Empire, licking its wounds, maintained scout vessels beyond the borders of Zephyrian territory. But the warning had been received and understood. Humans protect the void, and those under their protection, even the most peaceful of species, were no longer easy prey. Captain Sullivan stood at the observation deck of the Liberty, watching as the stars streaked past. First Officer Morgan joined him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked quietly. "Teaching them to fight?" Sullivan considered the question carefully. "We taught them to defend themselves. There's a difference. They'll never be the same. No civilization can remain unchanged when it encounters others," Sullivan replied. "The question is whether the change serves their core values or undermines them." "And for the Zephyrians?" Sullivan smiled slightly. "They valued life above all else. Now they know that sometimes protecting life requires standing against those who would destroy it. That's not corruption. That's evolution." As the Liberty and its Zephyrian escorts disappeared into the depths of space, the stars continued their eternal dance, unchanging and yet ever-changing, much like the civilizations that explored their light. The alliance forged in the crucible of necessity would shape interstellar history for generations to come, not through conquest or domination, but through the revolutionary idea that strength and gentleness, courage and compassion, protection and peace could coexist in perfect harmony.